Hi there, it's V with Crafting Daily Dose, and I'm so excited to be guest designing this month for Pear Blossom Press. I'm going to be showing you how to make light up cards. We've got two different versions here, and both of them use the Easy lights. Those lights are called Easy for good reason because they're really simple to use. Both of my cards feature the cute birds from the Stampin' Up! Puffin Party stamp set, and I'm going to go ahead and dim the overhead lights so that you can see the lights on the card better. Here's the flat version of the card. It's got a simple inside, and when you press on the word wish, the candle glows. And then this is the box version of that same card. There's room in the back for your message. And here, when you press, you see even more of a glow because the light projects also onto the background, which I think is really fun. So let's go ahead and get started. For my inside panel, I have a piece of basic white that is 3 3/4 by 5. I'm stamping on my sentiment with Memento Tuxedo Black. I'm adding a little strip of the Designer Series paper. This is 3 3/4 by 1/2. For the front panel, I'm stamping out my seam with Stays On ink since I'll be coloring with Stampin' Right markers, which are water-based. And I'll repeat it just to get a little better coverage. I've got the confetti stamp from Hey Birthday Chick, and I'm going to stamp a little bit of it along the edge using Calypso Coral ink. The puffin is really quick to color. I'm starting with Pale Papaya. I put just a thin line of Misty Moonlight and I blended it out with some Balmy Blue. I'm just going to use a sponge dauber to highlight this word wish because that's where I want the recipient to be able to press. Now that our panel is colored, we're going to create some holes to let the light shine through. Now, if you're handy with a craft knife, you can go ahead and cut out the flames and put some vellum behind your panel, and then the light will be very pretty and diffuse through. We're going to keep things simple though. We're just going to poke holes right at the base of the flames. And because the candles are small enough and close enough together, there's going to be plenty of light that comes through and you'll be able to see it. So I just use a thumbtack and then a little piece of foam. So I just went in a few times in each hole to make the hole a little bit bigger. And then I'm ready to cut out this panel using my stitched rectangle dies. So here's my front panel all cut out, and I have these die cuts from the Hey Birthday Chick dies. These are the streamers cut out from Pale Papaya and Pool Party, and I'm going to go ahead and put these on. First, I'm going to glue these together, connect them to make a longer piece. Now I'm going to prepare my card base. I've got a piece of Calypso Coral that is 8.5 by 5.5, scored in the middle at 4 1/4. Then I have a piece from the Pansy Petal Designer Series paper, and this is just a little bit smaller. It is 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. So there's going to be just a tiny 1/16 of an inch margin all the way around. Once I have my card base prepared, I'm just going to position my front panel. I'm not adhering anything. I'm just laying it on top. And I'm going to take a pencil and make a mark where those holes are for the flames. I'm also going to put my pencil above where this wish word is, kind of the center of that word. And then I will make a mark there as well. So I've got these 4 marks now. 3 are going to be where the flames are, and that's where I want my bulbs to be. And then 1 down here is where I want my little button to turn on the light. So here's what the Easy Light unit looks like. There is a battery holder here, and then there are these sets of 3 wires that end in 3 very bright lights. It comes with a really thin battery, and you can see on the battery holder there's a little plus sign there, and then there's a plus sign on top of the battery as well. So you're going to slide this in. They're like these 2 little clips there. So you slide it in, and once the battery is in place, when you press the little purple button over here, those lights are going to shine. So what we want to do is position these lights right where those candle flames are going to be. So they're really just going to be clustered here together for this particular card. I've got some plain transparent tape, just like you would have in your home office or with school supplies. You can also use washi tape if you would like, but I'm just going to tape these down. And because they're so close together, I'm finding it easier to do just one at a time and not try to get them all positioned at once. Now, don't worry, this tape, and then later on when we're using foam, that's not going to affect the ability of the lights to work. Okay, after I have those taped in place, I'm going to test it. And that's working. And then what I want to do is I want to have my little purple button where I made that other mark. So again, that's the center of that wish word. So I'm going to put mine right here. And for this, I'm going to use tear and tape, or you can also use glue or any sort of strong adhesive. Before I finalize things, I'm going to bring the front panel and just place it on top again to make sure that my battery unit is not showing, and it's not. So now I have to take care of the excess wires, and I'm just going to very gently loop them up and tape them down out of the way. And I'm trying not to kink this very much here, right at that connection. So I'm just going to put it over here. Okay, so all that's left now is to put some foam to elevate the front panel above this whole mechanism. And then when we press wish, you can see that light up. So you can see from the side what the thickness is of this unit. It's pretty thin, but what we're going to do is take a double layer of foam adhesive, and we're going to elevate this front panel above it so that this button stays protected and it only gets pressed down when somebody is intentionally doing it. I'm going to be using foam adhesive sheets that I've already cut into these little strips, just because it's easier for me to peel off a single backing instead of all the little dimensionals, but dimensionals work just as great. And because both the dimensionals and the foam adhesive strips are the same thickness, they're interchangeable with one another. I've been using these adhesive sheets so much that I'm running low on them, so I've got these scraps that are left over that I'm trying to use up. I'm just checking to see how much clearance I'll need at the bottom. I'll switch over to foam adhesive strips since there's not as much room, but you can just trim down your dimensionals or foam adhesive sheets. As always, let's test our mechanism. I'm going to be gluing down some of these ice cream corner sprinkles to decorate my card. And after I finish with all the sprinkles, I'll go ahead and put that other panel on the inside of the card. So here's our completed card. I'm going to go ahead and dim the light so that you can see that better. Isn't that so fun? And it was really easy to put together. You don't have to engineer the circuit or anything like that. It comes together really quickly. And you're ready to light up somebody's birthday. So this is the flat version of the card, and next I'm going to show you how to do the same card but in a box version. For my box card, I'm starting out with a full sheet of 8.5 by 11 inch Calypso Coral cardstock, and I'm going to cut it in half along the short side. So I'm putting it at 4 1/4 inch. And on this trimmer, I have both a lighter gray blade for scoring and then a darker gray one for cutting. So I'm going to be cutting at 4 1/4 inches. Once I've done that, I'm going to now score it in the middle. So I'm putting it at 2 1/8 inches. And this time I'm scoring. Now I can turn it by 90 degrees, it doesn't matter which direction, and I'm going to make some score lines along the long side. Now, this score line that we've made here, the horizontal one, this is going to be an important guide because our piece is going to get cut above this score line and then it will be scored below it. You can do this combination of cutting and scoring right on the trimmer. I find it easier for this time to just go ahead and score everything and then I'll cut it out by hand with my scissors afterwards, using those score lines as a guide. So I'm going to score at 4 inches. And if you were doing the combination, you would put it at 4 inches, but you would cut above this horizontal score line and then you would score below it. So 4 inches, 5 1/4. Nine 1/4. And then 10 1/2. Now that I've scored everything, I'm going to cut those lines that are above this horizontal score line. So this is what your piece should look like now, whether you cut it on the trimmer or whether you did it by hand. So all of these flaps at the top are disconnected from one another, but everything on the bottom is still connected. Now I'm going to take this panel that is all the way on the left and I'm going to go ahead and cut it off all together. So this is the longer panel that's on the left. Just like that. And then I'm also going to cut the one that is on the right end. So now we've got this larger panel flanked by two that are more narrow, and I'm going to cut down the height of these two. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and fold this, fold it back out of the way so that I don't accidentally cut it. So I'm going to put this back in the trimmer, and see this edge here? I'm going to put this edge at the 1 inch mark. That way my flaps are going to be 1 inch tall once everything is upright again. So this edge along the 1 inch mark right here. And then I'm holding everything down carefully, moving my scoring blade out of the way, and I will cut with the other blade. So this is what we have. Here's what it looks like from the other side. I will go ahead and do all of these vertical score lines as mountain folds, and then I will do the horizontal score lines as valley folds. I did fold this flap down to get it out of the way to cut the other pieces, but I'm going to leave it upright in the final card so I don't need to reinforce this score line. So your box is going to come together just like this, and so you can see it kind of taking shape already. This little section is going to be our gluing flap, and generally for those, I like to trim off just a little bit from the corners. That way, when you are gluing it down, if you don't align things exactly right, it gives you a little bit of wiggle room. Those corners won't show, and so it will look more neat. So it will be like this. I've got several pieces of the Pansy Petals Designer Series paper that I'm going to use to decorate the box card before I assemble it. You can use Stampin' Seal, but I'm just going to use glue here for all of these. The pieces are all 1/4 of an inch smaller than the panel that they're covering in each dimension. This back piece is 3 3/4 inches wide by 4 inches high. The piece for the front is 3 3/4 inches across by 1 7/8 inch high. There are 2 of these to decorate the side panels, and they are 1 inch across by 1 7/8 inch high. These little pieces are 1 inch across and 3/4 inches high. I've got a panel for my greeting on the back. It's the same dimensions as the Designer Series paper we used on the front, so it's 3 3/4 by 4 inches, and I'm going to go ahead and use Stampin' Seal for this one. Now that I've done that, I will go ahead and turn it around. I'm going to put in a strut that goes across the box, and the purpose of that is to give something to attach more elements to so that there is another layer to our scene. So this is a piece of Calypso Coral cardstock. It is 5 inches across by 1 inch high, and it's been scored at 1/2 inch from both ends. And they're going to be mounted folded to create little gluing tabs like this. And again, since it's a gluing tab, I like to trim off a little bit from the corners. And what I'm going to go ahead and do is to glue it to just one side of our card. So let's do this side. So here's my strut, and the flaps fold backwards this way. So I'm putting it on this surface here. I'm going to turn it now so that the glue is on the bottom, and I'm going to align it with this side panel. Just like this. So I've put the edge of my gluing tab right next to this crease, but not overlapping it. And then the top edge of my strut is going to match up with the top edge of this side panel. And I'll let that set. Okay, now I'm going to put glue on this tab, and I'm also going to put glue on our little tab over here. So when it's lying flat, it's like this. I'm going to push it up, and I'll put glue on this surface and glue on this surface. You can also do those as two separate steps if you would like. And I'm getting my glue right to the edge of those creases. And I'm just using the tip of the glue bottle to spread that around so that the glue is not too thick and it won't ease out. Another option that you have in these areas is to use some tear and tape. So now that I have adhesive on both of those gluing tabs, I'm going to go ahead and fold my other piece over right onto the exposed adhesive. So I've done that one, and now I'm coming over here to kind of hold this one down, and I'm pressing the paper onto that one as well. And I'll give that time to set up. This allows you to make sure that your box is going to fold down completely flat in at least one direction. And now our box is assembled. We just have to decorate it. So I'm using pretty much the same elements to decorate as before. This is just a more stepped up version. And I'm going to put my little birthday puffin on this side. And it's okay that this wing extends out a little bit, because you can see when it folds flat, it's still going to fit within the perimeter of the card and the envelope. Now, box cards can have several of these struts to have different layers. Ours is not very deep, so I'm only leaving it at one strut, but I can still attach things to the front and to the back for more depth and interest. So I'm going to add this little puffin right here. Now there's more detailed decorating to do, but I'm going to pause here to put the lights in. We needed these guys in place first so that we knew where the cake was going to be in the scene, since that determines where the lights go. But the rest of it can wait until after we check and make sure that everything is working nicely. Here's the light unit, and I've already put the battery into this one. I always like to check it first before I go further, and it works perfectly. So what I want to do for this design is to put my sentiment on the front. I'm going to thread the wires through to the middle of the box card and behind the flames of the candles. I've chosen to stamp my sentiment onto one of the painted labels dies, and I use this one because it's big enough to fit the sentiment, but it's also big enough to cover the battery unit, so it's a perfect size. If you don't have a die that is the correct size, you can always just trim down a piece of cardstock to whatever size that you need. So just like before with the flat card, I'm going to decide where I want my label to be. Hover my pencil there, and then make a mark. I'm going to put my battery unit back in place so that this purple button roughly corresponds to where that mark is, and I can see that my wires start to come together on their own right around here. So I will also make a mark there. Now I'm double checking with my placement to make sure that the label that I've chosen is going to cover both of those marks well, and it does. Now the one that's on the left is going to be where I make a hole. So I'm going to partially fold this down, get my little piece of foam in there. I'm going to bring my scissors in and open up the blades and use the point of my scissors just to kind of twist around in that hole that I started to make it larger. I need it big enough to be able to thread these little bulbs through. Let me see if this is big enough yet. Doable, but it's going to be tricky, so I'm going to make it bigger. It's gone right through. I'm going to pass it behind this strut here. So can you see where that is? Just like before, I want to tape the bulbs in place behind the candles. So my tape is bigger than I need. I'm going to trim that down in just a second, but I'm going to test it first. And take a look at it from the front. That looks great, and I also like the way that it casts a glow on the back. Once I know that's working well, I'll trim off the extra tape. I'm ready to put adhesive on the back of my battery unit, and I can either use glue or tear and tape here. I'll pull on the cord a little bit to be able to get this battery unit down closer to the card. And I'm aiming to put that button right over the mark I made earlier. Test things again. Once my battery unit is in place, then I will deal with this extra cord here. I'm going to go ahead and make a little loop. Just going to twist it clockwise there. And I'm going to use some tape to secure it down to the front panel, just to make things a little bit more tidy. You want to still give some slack and not make this connection too tight. Test it to make sure that it can fold down flat and pop up again without putting any extra stress on that connection. And that looks fine. So now we are ready for the final decorations. It's time to put my sentiment label on, and for that I'm going to use the foam adhesive strips, but you can also use dimensionals or foam adhesive sheets that have been cut down. I do need a double layer, so what I did was I stacked one strip on top of another to create a double layer. And then I put it all the way around the label. Now, if you look very closely, for the bottom part of the label, I actually cut these as separate pieces, and I'll show you why. One of the things that you can do to protect your battery during shipping is to wedge in a piece of paper that would disrupt the circuit. So that way, if in the shipping process the button gets accidentally pressed, it's not going to turn the lights on and then drain the battery. So I'm going to remove this and show you a different way to install the battery. I have a 1/2 inch strip of basic white cardstock, but you can use any sort of printer paper or other thin paper. Nothing too thick because it's not going to fit underneath the battery unit. So I'm just placing the paper on the underside. So here's the plus side, and then I'm putting it on the bottom. So I'll slip the paper in, and then the battery. Test to make sure that you're able to pull out that strip easily. I'm just going to trim off this part at the top. I want to make sure that the top of the paper is not too high because it's going to get trapped underneath the foam on top if I do. So now when you press the button, nothing happens because the circuit is no longer complete. Now the reason that I have this section of foam along the bottom as a separate piece is that's going to allow me to remove the backing from the other areas but leave this backing on. That way it won't stick to my little piece of paper, and that will allow the paper to still be pulled out. If I pulled off this backing here, it's going to trap that piece of paper and then the lights will never work. Remember, leave this backing on. And I can just let my recipient know to pull out that piece of paper and that they can press on the wish word to make it light up. And we finished our box card. You can see that both this version as well as the flat version are straightforward to make and not intimidating because the lights are already pre-wired and ready to go. I hope that you've enjoyed this dose of creativity and that you'll join me the next time. I'd love to know if you have a chance to try out light up cards. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.